Part 2, Step 1. Let us now turn to the practical side of the initiation. We must always be aware of the fact that the body, soul, and mind are to be trained simultaneously, for otherwise it would be impossible to gain and maintain the magic equipoise. In the theoretic part, I already called attention to the dangers possibly rising from one-sided training. It is not advisable to hasten development because everything needs time. Patience, perseverance, and tenacity are fundamental conditions of the development. The pains taken in one's development will be amply rewarded. Whoever is willing to enter the magic path should regard it as his sacred duty to practice regular exercises. He ought to be kind, generous, and tolerant with his fellow man, but relentless and hard with himself. Only such behavior will be followed by success in magic. Refrain from condemning or criticizing, and sweep your own doorstep first. Do not permit anyone to look into your sanctuary. The magician will always keep silence with respect to his way, rise, and success. This silence grants the highest powers, and the more this commandment is obeyed, the more easily accessible these powers will become. Manage it so that you spend as much time as possible in your rise or advance. It is quite unnecessary to waste time with sitting for hours, drinking beer, and passing time in trivial company. Time is running away like the water, never to return. A certain amount of time ought to be provided for, but it is very necessary to stick to it. Exceptions ought to be allowed for only in quite inevitable cases. Man is subject to habits, and once accustomed to a defined timetable for his exercise, he will feel compelled to do his exercises in the same way that there is one for the necessities of life, such as eating, drinking, and sleeping. It ought to happen in regard to the exercises, which must, as it were, become a habit. This is the sole way to attain a sure and full success. There is no prize without diligence. It is my ambition to arrange for the instructions as if they were meant for the busiest man. He who has plenty of time on hand may be able to be occupied with two or more exercises at the same time. Magic Mental Training 1. Number 1. Thought Control, Discipline of Thoughts, and Subordination of Thoughts. Take a seat in a comfortable chair or lie down on a seat. Relax the whole body, close your eyes, and observe the train of your thoughts for 5 minutes, trying to retain it. At first, you will find that there are rushing up to you thoughts concerning everyday affairs, professional worries, and the like. Take the behavior of a silent observer toward these trains of thoughts, freely and independently. According to the mentality and the mental situation you happen to be in at the moment, this exercise will be more or less easy for you. The main point is not to forget yourself, not to lose the train of thoughts, but to pursue it attentively. Beware of falling asleep while doing this exercise. If you begin to feel tired, stop instantly and postpone the exercise to another time, when you intend not to give in to the tiredness. The Indians sprinkle cold water on their faces or rub down the face and upper part of their bodies to remain brisk and not waste precious time. Some deep breathing before you begin will also prevent tiredness and sleepiness. As time goes on, each disciple will find out such little tricks by himself. This exercise of controlling thoughts has to be undertaken in the morning and at night. It is to be extended each day by 1 minute to allow the train of thoughts to be pursued and controlled without the slightest discretion for a time of 10 minutes at least after a week's training. This space of time is destined to the average man. If it should not suffice, everyone can extend it according to his own apprehension. In any event, it is advisable to proceed very consciously, because it is of no use to hurry. Development being quite individual in men, on no account go further before the preceding exercise is perfectly under control. The attentive disciple will realize how, at the beginning, thoughts rush onto him, how rapidly they pass before him, so that he will have difficulty to recollect the lot of manifold thoughts. But from one exercise to the next, he will state that thoughts come up less chaotic, moderating little by little, until at last only a few thoughts emerge in his consciousness, arriving, as it were, from a far distance. The keenest attention ought to be given to this work of thought control, as it is very important for magic depth development, a fact that everyone will realize later on. Providing that the mentioned exercise has been thoroughly worked through and everyone has a complete command of it in practice, let us pass over the mental training. Up to now, we have learned to control our thoughts. The next exercise will consist in not giving way in our mind to thoughts obtruding themselves on our mind, unwanted and abstinent. For instance, we must be able not to occupy ourselves any longer with the tasks and worries of our profession when we come home from work and return to the family circle in privacy. All thoughts not belonging to our privacy must be set aside, and we ought to manage to become quite a different personality instantly. And just the other way around. In our job, all thoughts have to be concentrated in it exclusively, and we must not allow them to digress or wander home to private affairs or elsewhere. This has to be practiced time and again until it has developed into a habit. Above all, one ought to accustom oneself to achieve whatever one does with full consciousness, whether in professional work or in private, regardless whether the point is a big one or a trifle. This exercise should be kept for a lifetime because it is sharpening the mind and strengthening the consciousness and the memory. Having obtained a certain skill in this exercise, you may turn to the following one. The purpose will now be to hold on to a single thought or idea for a longer while, and to surpass any other thoughts associating and obtruding with force on the mind. Choose for this purpose any train of thoughts or ideation, or a suitable presentation according to your personal taste. Hold on to this presentation with all of your strength. Vigorously refuse all other thoughts that have nothing to do with the thoughts being exercised. At first, you will probably succeed only for a few seconds, later on, for minutes. You must manage to concentrate onto one single thought and follow it for a minimum of 10 minutes. If you succeed in doing so, you will be fit for a new exercise. Let us then learn how to produce an absolute vacancy of the mind. Lie down comfortably on a bed or sofa, or sit in an armchair and relax your whole body. Close your eyes, energetically dismiss any thought coming upon you. Nothing at all is allowed to happen in your mind. An absolute vacancy of mind must reign. Now hold on to this stage of vacancy without discretion or forgetting. At first you will manage to do so only for a few seconds, but by practicing it more often, you will surely succeed better at it. The purpose of the exercise will be attained if you succeed in remaining in this state for a full 10 minutes without losing your self-control or even falling asleep. Carefully enter your success, failure, duration of your exercise, and eventually disturbances into a magic notebook. See details under the heading Magic Soul Training. Such a diary will be useful to check your progress. The greater the use in doing so, the more easily you will undergo all other exercises. Prepare a working schedule for the coming day or week, and most of all, indulge in self-criticism. Magic Psychic Training 1. Introspection or self-knowledge. In your own mansion, meaning our body and soul, we must find our way about every moment. Therefore, our first task will be to know ourselves. Each initiation system, no matter which kind it may be, will put this condition in the first place. Without self-knowledge, there will be no real development on a higher level. In the first days of psychic training, let us deal with the practical part of introspection or self-knowledge. Arrange for a magic diary and enter all the bad sides of your soul into it. This diary is for your own use only and must not be shown to anybody else. It represents the so-called control book for you, and the self-control of your failures, habits, passions, instincts, and other ugly character traits. You have to observe a hard and severe attitude towards yourself. Be merciless towards yourself, and do not embellish any of your failures and deficiencies. Think about yourself in quiet meditation. Put yourself back into different situations of your past and remember how you behaved, and then what mistakes or failures occurred in the various situations. Make notes of all your weaknesses down to the finest nuances and variations. The more you are discovering, all the better for you. Nothing must remain hidden, nothing unrevealed. However insignificant or great your faults and fertilities may be, some especially endowed disciplines have been able to discover hundreds of failures in the finest shades. Disciples like to possess a good meditation and a deep penetration into their own souls. Wash your soul perfectly clean, sweep all the dust out of it. This self-analysis is one of the most important magic preliminaries. Many of the occult systems have neglected it, and that is why they did not achieve good results. This psychic preliminary work is indisputable to obtain the magic equilibrium, and without it there is no regular progress of the development to be thought of. Therefore, you ought to devote some minutes of time of self-criticism in the morning and at night. If you have got a chance of some free moments during the day, avail yourself of them and do some intensive thinking. Whether there are still some hidden faults anywhere, and if you discover them, record them on the spot so as not to forget a single one. Whenever you happen to find out any deficiency, do not delay to note it immediately. If within a week you do not exceed in discovering all your faults, spend another week on these inquiries until you have definitively established your list of offenses, having achieved this problem with 1 or 2 weeks. You have reached the point to begin with a further exercise. Now, by intensive thinking, try to assign each fault to one of the four elements. Appoint a rubric in your diary to each element and enter your faults into it. You will not feel sure of which element some of the faults are to be assigned. Record them under the heading of indifferent. In the progressing development, you will be able to determine the element corresponding to your deficiency. For instance, you will ascribe jealousy, hatred, vindictiveness, irascibility, and anger to the fiery element. Frivolity, self-presumption, boating, squandering, and gossiping to the element of air. Indifferences, laziness, frigidity, compliance, negligence, shyness, insolence, and instability to the watery elements. Laziness, lack of conscience, melancholy, irregularity, anomaly, and dullness to the element of earth. In the following week, you will meditate on each single rubric, dividing it into 3 groups. In the first group, you will enter the biggest failures, especially those that influence you the strongest or happen at the slightest opportunity. The second group will embrace faults occurring less frequently and in slighter degree. In the last group, you are recording those faults that happen only now and again. Go on doing so with the indifferent faults too. Work conscientiously at all times. It is worth the while. Repeat this whole procedure with your good physical qualities, entering them into the respective categories of the elements. Do not forget the 3 columns here as well. For example, You will assign activity, enthusiasm, firmness, courage, and daring to the fiery element. Diligence, joy, dexterity, kindness, lust, and optimism to the air element. Modesty, fervency, compassion, tranquility, tenderness, and forgiveness to the watery element. And respect, endurance, conscientiousness, thoroughness, sobriety, punctuality, and responsibility to the earth element. By doing so, you will get two so-called psycho mirrors, a black one with the evil qualities, and a white one with the good and noble character traits. These two magic mirrors are correct occult mirrors, and none but the owner has any right to look into them at all. Let me repeat once more that the owner must endeavor to elaborate his magic mirrors precisely and consciously. If in the course of the development he should remember any good or bad quality, he can still record it under the respective heading. These two magic mirrors will allow the magician to recognize rather exactly which of the elements is prevailing in his black or white mirror. This recognition is absolutely necessary to attain the magic equipoise, and the further the development depends on it. Magic physical training. 1. The material or carnal body. Hand in hand with the inner development of spirit and soul has to go that of the outer, the body also. No part of your ego must lag behind or be neglected. Right in the morning after getting up, you will brush your body with a soft brush until your skin turns faintly reddish. By doing so, your pores will open and be able to breathe more freely. Besides, the kidneys are exonerated for the most part. Then wash your whole body of the upper part of it, at least with cold water, and rub it rough with a towel until you feel quite warm. Sensitive people may use lukewarm water, especially in the cold season. This procedure ought to become a day's routine and be kept for a lifetime. It is so refreshing and removes tiredness. In addition to this, you should practice morning gymnastics, at least for some minutes a day, to keep your body flexible. I shall not put up a special program of such gymnastic exercise, as everyone can draw it up according to his age and personal liking. What matters most is to keep your body elastic. Number 2, the mystery of breathing. Breathing is to be given your very careful consideration. Normally, each living creature is bound to breathe. There is no life at all without breathing. It is obvious that the magician ought to know more than the mere fact of inhaling oxygen and nitrogen, which the lungs absorb and exhale as carbon dioxide and nitrogen. The lungs cannot exist without breathing and food. All we need for our life and what preserves our life, to wit, breathing and food, is tetrapolar, four elements plus a fifth. The vital element, or Casa principle, as we have said in the theoretical part about the elements. But the air we are breathing has a finer degree of density than the grossly material food has. But according to the universal laws, both of them have the same nature, being tetrapolar and serving to keep the body alive. Let us therefore return to the breathing. Oxygen is subject to the fiery element, and nitrogen to the element of water. The airy element is the meditating element, and the earth element is that which holds together the oxygen and nitrogen. The akasa, or etheric element, is the lawful causal or divine principle. Just as, in the great universe of nature, here the elements too have their polarity. The electric as well as the magnetic fluid. By normal or unconscious breathing, the body is supplied only with as much elemental substance as is necessary for its normal preservation. Here also the supply depends on the consumption of the elemental substance. It is quite different with conscious breathing. If we put a thought, an idea, or an image, no matter whether it is concrete or abstract, into the air to be inhaled, it will take in the Akasa principle of the air concerned and convey it through the electric and magnetic fluids to the air substance. This impregnated air will play a double role when it is conveyed to the lungs through the blood vessels. In the first place, the material parts of the elements are destined to preserve the body. Secondly, the electromagnetic fluid, charged with the idea or the image, will lead the electromagnetic air, colored with the idea from the bloodstream, through the astral matrix to the astral body, and from there to the immortal spirit through the reflective mental matrix. And this is the solution of the secret of breathing from the Magick point of view. Many theologies utilize conscious breathing for instructive purposes, as for example, the Hatha Yoga system. Without knowing the right process, several people have suffered severe damage to their health, a fact only to blame in the extreme breathing exercises asked for by this system, especially when such practices have been realized without the guidance of an experienced leader or guru. In most cases, the inexperienced reader has been persuaded to do these exercises because they were promised a quick acquisition of occult powers. If he wants, the magician can achieve this aim much more easily and sooner with the aid of the universal initiation system described so thoroughly in this present book. Consequently, it is quite evident that it is not the quantity of inhaled air that matters, but the quality respecting the idea in penetrating this air substance. Therefore, it is not necessary, nor even advisable, to pump the lungs full of a lot of air, putting a needless strain on them, and consequently, you will do your breathing exercises slowly and calmly without any haste. Sit down comfortably, relax the whole body, and breathe in through the nose. Imagine that with the inhaled air, health, tranquility, peace, success, or everything you are aiming at, will pass into your body through the lungs and the blood. The eidetic image of your idea must be so intense that the air you are inspiring is so strongly impregnated with your desire that it has already become reality. You should not allow the slightest doubt about this fact. To avoid weakening it, it will be enough to start with 7 inhalations in the morning, as well as at night. Increase the number of breaths gradually to more in the morning and at night. Do not hurry or exaggerate, for everything needs time. In any case, you should not proceed to the imagination of another different desire before the first chosen one has been completely accomplished. In a pupil endowed with talents of high order, success will manifest itself, at the earliest after 7 days, all depending on the degree of the imagination and aptitude. Someone else will need weeks, even months, for the realization of his desires because of the kind of desires that he will also play an important role to. It is therefore desirable not to form egotistic wishes to begin with, but to confine them to the above mentioned ones, such as tranquility, health, peace, and success. Do not extend breathing exercises to more than 1/2 hour. Later on, a standard 10 minutes will do for you. Number 3, conscious reception of food. What has been said about breathing applies in the same way to taking nourishment. Here also, the same elemental processes are going on as they happened to in the air being inhaled. but the effect of the elements is stronger and more material. Desires impressed on food have a considerable influence on the material plane, where they are exposed to the most material emanations of the elements. Therefore, the magician will do well to consider this aspect if he wants to achieve anything concerning his body or other material desires. Now sit in front of your dish of food that you are going to eat, and with the most intense imagination possible, concentrate on all your desire being embodies in the food, and as effective as if needed, it had already been realized. If you happen to be alone, undisturbed, and not watched by anyone, hold your hands in blessing manner above your food. Not having this opportunity, at least impress your desires upon the food you are taking in. Or close your eyes. You may give the impression of saying a prayer before eating your meal, a gesture that is quite true, as a matter of fact. Then eat your food slowly but consciously, with the interest conviction that together with your food, your desire actually is passing into your whole body, down to the finest nerves. The taking of food ought to be sacred act to you, similar to the communion of Christianity. For the magic constitution, it is not advisable to eat in a hurry. All kinds of food and beverages are suitable for the magic impregnation with desires. Yet all of the impregnated food and drinks have to be consumed entirely, and nothing should be left over. Do not read during a meal. Unfortunately, a great many people are in this bad habit. Any kind of conversation is also undesirable. One should eat only with the maintenance of one's desire. It is to be noted that no opposite desire should associate. For instance, if you are aspiring after health through conscious or magic breathing, you must not concentrate on success during your meal. It is most advantage to foster the same desire in breathing as well as in eating, to avoid any opposite vibration or emanations in your body. Remember the proverb, he who chases two hares at the same time will never catch one. Whoever in the conscious reception of food takes example in the Eucharistic mystery will find an analogy to it here. And remember the words of our Lord Jesus Christ. Take and eat, for this is my flesh. Take and drink, for this is my blood. He will seize their true and primary meaning. Eucharistic. Number 4, the magic of water. Water plays one of the most important parts, not only in daily life, being absolutely indispensable for drinking, preparing food, washing, producing steam in factories, and etc., but also in our magic development. The water element may prove to be a great factor. As we have already stated in the theoretical part, the watery element rules magnetism or the attractive force, and it is just this property that we shall utilize in the development of our facilities. All the books dealing with the animal magnetism, emanation of odd, and so on are acquainted with the fact that water can be magnetized or oddized, but it is far less known to enlarge this quality or use it in a different way. Not only water, but every kind of liquid has the special property of attracting and according to the contracting, holding fast, no matter whether good or bad influences be concerned. Therefore, we may consider the watery element, especially the material kind of it, as an accumulator. The colder water is, the greater its accumulative capacity. With its full specific weight, namely at 39 degrees or 4 degrees Celsius above zero, it is most responsive. This notion is not so decisive for the difference of receptivity of water or other liquids. Up to 43 degrees Fahrenheit or 6 degrees Celsius above zero is so insignificant and so faintly visible that only a thoroughly trained magician can recognize these differences. If by increase of heat water grows lukewarm, its receptivity is rapidly diminishing between 7 and 99 degrees Fahrenheit. It becomes neutral to magnetism. Attention. Here our only concern is with the specific properties of the attractive power and its practical value with respect to magnetism, which results from the interaction of the elements as an undeniable matter of fact. The impregnation through the Akasa principle presents in each substance, and consequently in physical water too, with a desire can be operated in any object and at any temperature whatsoever. A piece of bread, as well as a hot soup or a cup of coffee or tea, might be loaded or charged magically. But this charge does not depend on the accumulative capacity of the watery element, but takes place through the causal principle of the fifth power of the elements, and is brought about by the electromagnetic fluid of the elements concerned. It is important to pay attention to this difference to avoid errors. For instance, it is quite impossible to magneticize a dish of hot soup, because the accumulating power of the water element is balanced or increased by the expansion of heat present in the water. If it rises above 99 degrees Fahrenheit, the soup, however, can be impregnated with the corresponding desire. Now let us regard the magic of water from the practical side. Every time you are washing your hands, think intensely that by washing, not only do you wipe the dirt of your body, but also the uncleanliness from your soul. Think of failure, trouble, dissatisfaction, illness, and the like being washed off and turned over to the water. If possible, wash yourself from under the tap so that the dirty water can run off immediately, and at this moment think that your weaknesses are flowing off with the water. If you have nothing but a wash bowl at your disposal, do not forget to throw away the used water immediately, so nobody else can contact it afterwards. You can also dip your hands into the cold water for a while, and concentrate on the magneto-astral attractive force drawing all the weaknesses out of your body and soul. Be firmly convinced that all the failures are passing into the water. You will be surprised at the success of this exercise after a short period of time. This water also is to be thrown away at once. This exercise is extraordinarily effective if you can manage it in the summer while bathing in a river, when the whole body, except for the head of course, is beneath the water. You can do this exercise the other way around also, by magnetizing the water you are going to use or by impregnating it with your desire, remaining firmly convinced that through washing, the power of will pass into your body and the desire will be realized. He who has time to spare can combine both exercises by stripping off all evil in one water, say under the tap or in a separate basin, and then washing himself in another basin with the water impregnated with his desire. In this case, namely the first exercise, you have to use soap when washing off the evil. Female adepts have a third opportunity besides the two forementioned possibilities. They will concentrate their magnetism on the fact that the water makes the face and skin look much younger, more elastic, and thus more attractive. It is therefore advisable not only to wash the face, but to dip the whole face into the water for some seconds. This procedure is to be repeated at least 7 times in one turn. A bit of brux may be added in the water for this purpose. There is a further opportunity given to the magician that ought not to be overlooked. I mean the magnetic eye bath. In the morning, the magician dips his face into the water that has been boiled on the previous day, using a half-filled water basin, and opens his eyes in the water. He rolls his eyes in the water, repeating this equally 7 times. At first, he will have the sensation of slight stinging in the eyes, but this will disappear as soon as the eyes get accustomed to the exercise. Anyone suffering from weak eyesight may add a thin decantation of eye bright to the water. This eye bath makes the eyes restrained against changes in the weather and consequently strengthens the visual faculty, improving weak vision, and the eyes become clear and shiny. Do not forget, respectively, to magneticize the water destined to this purpose and to impregnate it with your concentrated wish. Advanced pupils who are training for clairvoyance are offered the opportunity here to promote their clairvoyant faculties. That is all for the moment about the material development and the training of the body. Summary of exercises of Step 1. Step 1. Magic Mental Training. 1. Thought Control. 2. Discipline of Thoughts. 3. Subordination of Thoughts. A. Control of thoughts twice a day from 1 to 10 minutes. B. Suppression of certain thoughts, holding on to a chosen thought, provoking vacancy of mind. C. Magical diarizing, self-criticism, planning of thought trains for the day or the week ahead. Step 1. Magic Psychic Training. 1. Introspection of self-knowledge. 2. Making of the black and white mirrors of the soul with respect to the elements in 3 spheres of activity. Step 1. Magic Physical Training. 1. Habituation to normal or reasonable mode of life. 2. Conscious breathing. 3. Conscious reception of food, eukaryotic mystery. Number 4. Magic of water. The time limit for the completion of these exercises is fixed from a fortnight up to 1 month and is meant for the people of average aptitudes. Those who have already practiced concentration and meditation should get along in this space of time. Those who are not yet experienced will have to extend their training period. Success depends chiefly on the individuality of the pupil. For the practice, it should be useless for him to pass up from one step to the next without having completed the foregoing one in such a way that he is well up in it. Step 2. Number 1. Autosuggestion or the secret of subconscious. Before proceeding to describe the exercise of this second step, let me explain the secret of the subconscious and its practical consequences. In the same way as normal consciousness has its seat in the soul and is activated by the cerebrum in the body, consequently the head subconsciousness is a property of the soul. Residing in the cerebellum, the back part of the head, with respect to the magical practice, let us deal with the study of the psychological function of the cerebellum, consequently the subconscious. In every individual that is in his right senses, the normal sphere of consciousness is intact. He always at any time is capable of making use of the functions of normal consciousness. As it results from our investigations, there is no power in the universe nor in man that does not vary between opposites. Hence we may consider subconsciousness as the opposite to normal consciousness. That which in normal consciousness we subsume by the concepts of thinking, feeling, willing, memory, reason, and intellect is reflected in our subconsciousness in a contrary way. Particularly speaking, We can regard our subconsciousness as our opponent, the incentive or the impulsive to all that is undesirable, such as our passions, our failures, our weaknesses, originate just in this very sphere of consciousness. To the pupil now falls the task of introspection, to disclose the work of this subconsciousness, according to the key of the elements of the tetrapolar magnet. This is a satisfactory task, inasmuch the pupil will acquire self-reliance by his own reflection or meditation. Hence, subconsciousness is the incentive of all we do not wish for. Let us learn how to transmute this, so to speak, antagonistic aspect of our ego, so that it not only does not harm, but on the contrary, will help to realize our desires. Subconsciousness needs time and space in the material world for its realization. Two basic principles valid for all things that have to be transmuted into reality from the causal world. Withdrawing time and space from the subconscious, the opposite polarity will cease to bring its influences to bear upon us. As we shall be able to realize our wishes through the subconsciousness, this sudden elimination of the subconscious offers the key for the practical use of autosuggestion. If we inculcate in the subconsciousness the wish of not giving in tomorrow or any other time to any of our passions, say smoking or drinking alcohol, subconsciousness will have time enough to put some hindrance, directly or indirectly, in our way. In most of these cases, mainly in the presence of feeble or underdeveloped willpower, subconsciousness will nearly always succeed in taking us by surprise or causing failures. On the other hand, if we exclude the concepts of time and space from subconsciousness, while impregnating it with a desire, only the positive pole of subconsciousness will affect us. Normal conscious being equated, and our impregnated desire must have the success we are expecting. This knowledge and the possibilities related to it are of the greatest importance for the magical development and have therefore to be considered as far as self-suggestion is concerned. The phrasing to choose for autosuggestion must always be expressed in the present or imperative form. You should not say, I shall stop drinking or smoking or whatever. The correct form is, I do not smoke, I do not drink, or else I do not like smoking, or I do not like drinking, and so on, according to whatever you wish to suggest in a positive or negative sense. The key or clue to self-suggestion is to be found in the form of the phrasing. It is that which always and in every respect has to be considered if you wish to do an autosuggestion through subconsciousness. Subconsciousness is acting in the most effective and penetrating way during the night, when the man is asleep, in the state of sleep. The activity of normal consciousness is suspended, subconsciousness working in its place. The most appropriate time for auto-suggestion receptivity, therefore, is the moment when the body is resting drowsily in bed, i.e., immediately before falling asleep, as well as immediately after waking up, when we remain still half awake. That does not mean that a different time would be quite unsuitable for self-suggestion, but these two moments are most promising, subconsciousness being most responsive then. That is why the magician will never go to sleep in an emotional attitude, such as an anger or depression, worries which would have an unfavorable influence in his subconsciousness. Going on in the same train of thoughts with which he had fallen asleep, always go to sleep with the peaceful and harmonious thoughts or ideas about success, health, and pleasant feelings. Before you practice autosuggestion, make up a small chain of 40 beads. A knotted piece of string will also do fine. This expedient is only meant to avoid counting when you are retraining the suggestive formula over and over, as so not to divert your attention. This little gadget will also serve to make how many disturbances happened when you were practicing concentration and meditation exercises. All you have to do is move a bead or no at every interpretation. The practical use of autosuggestion is very simple. If you have worded that what you want to achieve in a precise sentence in the present and imperative form, such as I feel better and better every day, or I do not like smoking, or I am healthy, content, and happy, then you may proceed to the real practice. Immediately before falling asleep, take your string of beads or knots, and whether in an undertone, softly in your mind, according to your surroundings, repeat the phrase you have chosen and move one bead or knot at every repetition until you arrive at the ending of your string. Now you know for sure that you repeated the formula 40 times. The main point is that you imagine your wish as being realized already and having actual existence. If you do not yet feel sleepy after 40 repetitions, engage yourself for a while longer with the idea that your wish has been accomplished, and you're doing so until at last you fall asleep with your desires still in mind. You must try to transfer your desire to the sleep. Should you fall asleep while retraining the formula, the purpose will be achieved. In the morning, when you are not quite up and have some time to spare, you ought to reach for the string of beads and repeat the exercise once more. Some people get up several times during the night to urinate or for some other reasons. If so, they can repeat this exercise as well, and they will attain their desires all the sooner. Editor's note: a more modern practice is to use a repeating tape or cassette deck to accomplish this automatically. Now this question arises. What kind of wishes can be accomplished by self-suggestion? Principally, every wish can be fulfilled as far as mind, soul, and body are concerned. For example, refining of the character, reprecision of ugly qualities, weakness, disorders, recovery of health, removal and promotion of various aptitudes, development of facilities, and so on. Certainly, desires have nothing to do with the personality, as lottery numbers and such can never be falsified. Magic Mental Training 2. On the first step of our magical mental training, we have learned how to control and master our thoughts. Now let us go on to teach you how to raise the capacity of mental concentration in order to strengthen the willpower. Put some objects in front of you, say a knife, a fork, a pencil, and a box of matches, and fix your eyes on the objects for a while. Try to remember their shapes and colors exactly. Then close your eyes and endeavor to imagine a certain object plastically in exactly the same form as it is in reality. Should the object vanish from your imagination, try to recall it again. In the beginning, you will be successful in this experiment only for a few seconds. But when preserving and repeating this exercise, the object will appear more and more distinct, and disappearances and reappearances will take place more rarely from one exercise to the next. Do not be discouraged by initial failures, and if you feel tired, change to the next object. At the beginning, do not exercise longer than 10 minutes, but after a while, you may extend the exercise little by little up to 30 minutes. In order to check disturbances, use the string of beads or knots described in the chapter about autosuggestion. Move one bead at every disturbance or interruption. Thus later, you will be able to tell how many disorders happen in the course of an exercise. The purpose of the exercise is completed if you can hold on to one object for 5 minutes without any interruptions. If you have gotten to this point, you may pass on to imagining the object with your eyes open. Now the object ought to make the impression of hanging in the air and be visible before your eyes in such a plastic shape as to seemingly be tangible. Apart from the one object you imagine, nothing else of the surroundings must be noticed. Check disturbances with the aid of the string of beads. If you have succeeded in holding on to any object hanging plastically in the air for 5 minutes without the least incident, the task of this exercise has been fulfilled. After the visual concentration, let us make an inquiry about the auditory concentration. At the beginning, the creative imagination has to perform a certain role. It is, as it were, impossible to say, imagine the ticking of a clock, or something like that, because the concept of imagination generally involves a pictorial representation, which cannot be said about any auditory exercises. For the sake of better understanding, we ought to say, imagine you hearing the ticking of a clock. Therefore, let us employ this kind of expression. Now imagine that you are hearing the ticking of a clock on the wall. You will succeed in doing so only for a few seconds at the beginning, just as in the previous exercises. But by persisting on your exercises, you will hear the sound more and more distinctly, without any disturbance. The string of beads or knots will be beneficial here also for checking the disturbances. Afterwards, try to listen to the ticking of a pocket watch or a wrist watch or the chime of bells in various harmonies. You may also practice other auditory concentration experiments, such as the sounding of a gong, the different noises of hammering, knocking, scratching, shuffling, thunderclaps, the soft rustling of wind increasing to the howling of the storm, the tunes of a violin or a piano or other instruments. When doing these exercises, it is most important to keep within the limits of auditory concentration, not allowing for pictorial imagination. Should such an imagination emerge, banish it immediately. The chiming of a bell must never evoke the imagination of the bell itself. This exercise is completed as soon as you are able to keep this auditory imagination for up to 5 minutes. Another exercise in the sensory concentration. Try to produce the sensations of cold, warmth, gravity, lightness, hunger, thirst, and tiredness, and hold on to this feeling for at least 5 minutes without the slightest visual or auditory imagination. If you have acquired the facility of concentration in such a degree as to be able to produce any sensation you like, and hold it fast, you may pass on to the next exercise. Now let us throw some light upon the olfactory concentration. Imagine that you are smelling the scent of various flowers, such as roses, lilacs, violets, or other perfumes, and hold on to this imagination without allowing a pictorial image of the respective flower to emerge. Try to practice with disagreeable smells of different kinds. Exercise this kind of concentration until you are able to imaginarily bring about any sense at will and keep it for at least 5 minutes. Our last exercise will deal with the taste concentration. Taste concentration. Without thinking of any food or drink, or without imagining the same, you have to concentrate on taste. Choose the thumping sensations of taste, such as sweet, bitter, sat, and acid to begin with. Having got some certain skill herein, You may carry out an experiment on the taste of divers and spices at your discretion. If you have succeeded in producing any sensation of the chosen taste, and holding on to it for at least 5 minutes, the purpose of this exercise is fulfilled. One or another trainee will meet with smaller and greater difficulties in practicing these concentration exercises. This means that the cerebral function with respect to the concerned taste has been neglected or imperfectly developed. Most of the teaching systems will pay attention only to one or two or three functions at best. Concentration exercises performed with all the five senses strengthen your mind, your willpower, and you learn not only how to control all senses, but also develop and finally tame perfectly. A magician's senses must be developed equally, and he must be able to control them. These exercises are of paramount importance for the magical development, and therefore should never, ever, ever be omitted.